Hello and good morning. For the next 24 hours, I will only be making French foods. So as a lot of you know, I just came back from spending a month in Paris, France, where I feel like I fell in love with the cuisine a little bit. I was originally planning on doing a French food for 24-hour videos while I was there, but there was a plentiful supply of French cuisine, like literally right outside my doorstep. So I feel like I focused on taking advantage of that. Research. But now that I'm back home, I kind of just wanted to take the day to recreate some of my favorite recipes. So here we are. Today is dedicated to French cuisine. There's gonna be a lot of bon appetits. Also this time, I've already done most of my shopping because there's been a lot of preparation. But in order to have a proper French breakfast, I need to go and get a fresh baguette. So I'll be right back. The bakery really isn't that far, but I feel like my baguettes just never make it back home. I'm actually going to have to save part of this for dinner, which shouldn't be too hard, right? In addition to the baguette, I must also have its counterpart, the croissant. I actually see more people buying a croissant in the morning, and it's usually fresh out of the oven, warm and toasty and flaky. This is none of that currently. This is actually a day-old croissant, so it is a little stale. What I'm going to do is actually transform this into an almond croissant. So this is actually one of the things I learned towards the end of my course. It's essentially a way to reuse old croissants. And you saw it too at the bakery I visited in Paris. So I thought I'd give it a try today using my precious cookbook that I brought back. In order to make an almond croissant, I have to make some almond cream. So that's what we're gonna start with today, so we can enjoy both a baguette and a croissant on this lovely morning. Here are my ingredients. We have some softened butter, eggs, ran out of white sugar, so we're using light brown sugar, some fine almond flour, vanilla bean. The recipe calls to use rum, but I thought I would try using this mandarin liquor that I got because, you know, I feel like almond goes really well with citrusy flavors. Since I don't have custard powder, putting a little bit of cornstarch just to help make it a little thicker. Let's mix this together. In goes the butter. Imperative that it's soft. I'm gonna slowly add my egg. On second thought, actually was supposed to add the sugar first. I was waiting to have my coffee with this breakfast, but maybe I should have had my coffee before. My mind is just all over the place. Almond flour, and the key is to mix it in, but not so much. Otherwise, the cream might swell up a little too much. Now to add the rest of the things. This is kind of the consistency we're looking at. It's a little bit goopy. This is basically it. Smells like a nice almond tart. You can actually make this in advance if you want. I already made my simple syrup, which is off to the side, cooling. Next part now is really to assemble and transform our sad little stale croissant. Here she is. Behold the stale croissant. We're going to slice this open enough that we can open it. It really isn't that fluffy anymore, but no fear, because our remedy is to drown it in syrup. Our chef actually said in some bakeries, people dunk the entire croissant into simple syrup. But today we are going to pastry brush it. I would like to avoid a crazy sugar high this early in the day. Gonna just do a little dab. I'm still being quite generous with it, let's be honest. I have my frangipane, and we're just gonna squeeze this on there. Ta-da! And we're going to cover this, because we're gonna do some on top here too. Incredibly indulgent. Almond on top. There you go, look at that. And we're gonna bake it for around 20 minutes or so. Nice little twice baked almond croissant. And while that's baking, I'm going to slice up my baguette, which I'm going to serve with some of this very nice butter that I hope is still good because I've been saving it for this occasion. I think these butters went kind of viral because you can actually vacuum pack it there and bring it home. I may have bought one of each flavor, which in the name of research, I did bring to class to have everyone rate their favorites. I personally am in love with this lemon butter at the very end. I could just eat it straight. This is the onion one, the spicy one, and the lemon one, which just looks like normal butter. And it is done. It smells so good. Like the crackling on top of cream puffs. Also, there are 2 almond croissants here because I made one very quickly just in case. But you know what? They both kind of look really good. Almond croissant number 1. And here's the second one. And I was a little more generous with the almond cream on this one, so you can see that it kind of oozed out. I'm going to put everything on a proper breakfast plate, make my espresso. Should be ready to sit down, get ready for the day. Nothing like a shot of espresso to wake the body up. No yogurt today. I feel like we have plenty going on already. It's actually my first time making this since I came back. That was an extremely satisfying bite. I was putting on all that syrup and I was worried. I was like, oh wow, this is like a lot. This is going to be really crazy sweet. No, if anything, the dough just kind of soaks it up beautifully and balances it out. Do you see that frangipan right in the middle? And twice baking it this way really does sort of resuscitate the croissant. Trying the other croissant just to be sure. Same thing. Remember how it was like super firm earlier? Now it's like perfect, tender, flaky again. I don't know if I ever need to buy an almond croissant outside again. I highly recommend. Let me also just try a little bit of this butter. This butter is just so rich and creamy. Even the butter itself without the flavoring has so much richness. I could eat this every day. Nice, great start to the morning. And then I'm actually gonna go take a French lesson. I was being very serious about wanting to be better at speaking French, but for now, a moment of peace. Okay, I am full and energized, ready for my French class. I've actually been trying to learn French a couple months before my month-long stay in Paris, and especially now knowing that a lot of internships in France actually require you to speak French. So it was a lot of kind of using different apps, a lot of watching TV shows like Lupin, listening to French songs. You know, I was just trying to maximize my time with the French language. But I realized that even with all of that, it was still incredibly hard to actually speak the language in front of people. Like I would go to a bakery in Paris and just choke up trying to say une baguette s'il vous plaît. I wasn't sure about my pronunciation. I didn't want to be laughed at. I just felt very not confident. And something that's been really helping me with that I wish I started earlier are these classes I've been taking with the language school Lingoda. What I honestly love the most about these classes is that there's always a native level speaker teaching the class, guiding your pronunciation, and even giving you personalized feedback after class. You can pick between doing one-on-one or group classes, but even for groups, there's a maximum of 5 people, so everyone has a lot of opportunities to speak up. I will admit I was very nervous in the beginning, having to speak a language I'm not familiar with in front of a group of people, but once I got used to it, I found it to be so incredibly rewarding because it kind of forces me to step outside of my comfort zone and to actually practice it verbally. The other thing that I really love about Lingoda classes is how flexible it is. You can pick classes that are suited for your schedule, your level. They have these structured syllabuses that you can kind of go in and read through. Personally, I really enjoy going through the course materials before and after class just to make sure I'm actually absorbing all that learning. So they do offer a couple different learning plans: Teams for structured learning, Flex for maximum flexibility, and Sprint for the fastest progress. I honestly just cannot recommend Lingoda enough. I feel like it's really slowly started building my confidence from the ground up. I'm gonna leave you a link in the video description box below that should give you a $25 discount as well as up to 20 free private classes if you sign up for Lingoda Flex. No better time than now to start learning new skills. I'm gonna go back and run through my flashcards again. We're gonna do introducing our jobs today, so good luck to me. I can do this. All right, took me another half an hour to go through my notes and respond to some emails, but here we are for lunch. I feel like from what I saw in Paris, a lot of people either grabbed sandwiches for lunch or they would go to a bistro, and one of the most common menu items I'd see are these croque monsieur, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like is very much the fancy Parisian version of a grilled cheese. So for lunch today, I wanted to bring us back to that moment. Pretend we're at a nice Parisian cafe somewhere. But what's going to be special about today's lunch is that I will be making the bread from scratch. Specifically, sandwich bread, pain de mie. As its name suggests, perfect for sandwiches. And as we all know, bread takes a lot of time, so I actually started this process 2 days ago, starting with the fermented dough. I'm just mixing some flour, water, salt, and yeast together. I tried to do this on the stand mixer at first, didn't really work out, so I ended up just doing it by hand. Just like a nice little arm workout, as I always say. And essentially, I just kept kneading this until it was totally smooth. Once that's ready, I'm just placing it in a bowl and letting it ferment in the fridge overnight. And the benefit of adding fermented dough is really just to add to the flavor. It gives it a little bit of acidity and also extra strength, which will then help with its texture. And so then the next day I got started with my base dough, and I'm just combining a bunch of ingredients: flour, both my water and milk, some sugar, yeast, salt, butter, and also my fermented dough. Continue kneading the dough until it becomes just very supple and it has some sort of elasticity. This is where I let my dough ferment at room temperature for around 45 minutes or so. You can see that it's super poofy, so now is the degassing process where I'm just punching it flat down again. So then I can reshape it and carefully carry this big baby dough into this loaf pan that I've already oiled. The next thing is really to let it proof in a steam oven for around 1.5 hours. I don't have a steam oven, so what I'm doing instead is having it rest with a bowl of boiling water, which should help create some sort of steam. I will say, I think I may have underestimated the sheer size of this dough, so some of it ended up spilling out a little bit, which I've trimmed off, but I baked it, and here we have our pain de mie. You can see that I sliced off this side, but it has the perfect 4 edges. So all I have to do now is slice this up so we can continue with our lunch making. So here we have our 2 slices. I'm going to butter it using some of that French butter. I'm gonna be real generous with the butter here. Butter side down, so then the butter underneath will give it like a nice crust. In terms of fillings, I have some French bistro ham and some Emmental cheese, Parmesan Reggiano, and also some sour cream. The ones I've typically consumed are made with bechamel sauce, but I found this recipe that uses sour cream that supposedly gives it like a lighter, tangier flavor, so I wanted to give that a try today. First things first, gonna grate up some of my cheese. Any cheese really kind of works. I just like Parmesan for its nutty flavor, and Emmental just melts really nice. Cheese is ready. A little bit of nutmeg, sour cream. Now we're gonna mix it together until it becomes this like nice thick paste. Here it is, the paste. Just gonna slice this cheese into thin slices. And also my ham. It's my favorite sandwich ham. And layer cheese right on top. Kind of try to fill it as best as we can. Trying not to be greedy, but at the same time. Okay, put a little bit of butter on top here as well. Now is when we stack this right on top. This beautiful cream cheese mixture we just made. Spreading it all the way through. So you get this nice layer on the very top, and now we can pop it in the oven. This should take around 10 minutes or so, and we'll check if it needs to go into the broiler. While we wait, in true bistro fashion, I am going to prepare some fries and salad. Looks like some sort of Stranger Things creature, the cheese bubbling. Here is what she looks like. I'm gonna put an egg right on top to make it a madame. And voila, croque madame. What did I say about it looking like a fancy schmancy grilled cheese? Ooh, hoo, hoo. Gonna plate this up with fries and salad and all. Maybe even like have a glass of wine or something. Bon appetit. Have my glass of wine as well. Whew. Man, this really brings me back to Paris. I feel like every meal for lunch was served with fries. I decided to go both options today, salad and fries, to be healthy. I was hoping we could get like a nice cheese pool with this, but I think I stared at it for a little too long. You see that buttery crust? So many textures. The crispiness of the fried egg, creaminess of the cheese, crunch of the toast. I really just feel like I'm eating a very fancy ham and cheese. Also pretty happy with this pain de mie. Very solid meal. Now all I need is some sunshine, be on the sidewalk, feel the breeze on my face. Oh man, I don't know when I'll be hungry next, but perhaps in true French fashion, given that they don't really eat dinner until around 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., maybe I'll be hungry then. And I am back. It is still quite bright outside. Think about summertime and endless daylight. Just about dinner time, and I am here with my Julia Child cookbook because couldn't do French cuisine without the French cookbook. It just teaches you so many of the basics, and I feel like I'm only just starting to work through all the recipes. But for tonight, I had to go with the most iconic beef bourguignon, or as they say, boeuf bourguignon. During my research process, I also watched the video of Julia Child making this, and there really is just something so endearing about this woman, just so full of knowledge and so full of joy in teaching you how to cook. What I would have given to have her as my teacher. Beef bourguignon, I would say, is a bit of a complicated recipe that takes a full day of cooking and is actually, supposedly, better enjoyed the day after because the flavors are more concentrated. And so as you can imagine, I got started on this earlier this week. Lots of steps here, starting with the very beginning. I have some bacon here, which I'm just cutting into smaller strips. And once I have my bacon pieces, I'm actually boiling it in water first because this helps the meat retain its moisture and to stay tender while you're rendering the fat. And all I'm trying to do here is really just to brown the bacon a little bit, get some more of that oil out, because this oil is what we're gonna need to saute the beef. This is 3 pounds of beef. It is a lot of beef. And the most important thing, she says, is to dry the beef very, very well, because if it's wet, it's not going to brown as well. I do think I might have been a little too eager here because I filled up my pan a little too much with beef. So for the rest of the batches, I separated it a little better. And while the beef is browning, I'm just slicing up my vegetables, which I can then toss in that flavorful beef bacon fat. Once the vegetables had some nice color on it, that's when I put the beef and the bacon back in and just gently seasoned it with some salt and pepper, sprinkling in some flour, which is supposed to give the meat like a nice light crust. This is going straight into the oven, uncovered, for a few minutes. So now that I have all the half-cooked vegetables and meat, this is the part where we add in just a lot of red wine. Also where we add in broth, but let's be honest, you're more heavy-handed with the wine than you are with the stock. That's when I also add in the rest of the seasonings. The tomato paste, some thyme and bay leaf, some grated garlic. Then I'm just letting it cook a little bit, just enough to get like a little simmer going. That's when I'm covering it back up and putting it in the oven. And this is pretty much the part where you just let the beef bourguignon do its thing. It's just gonna sit in the oven for a couple of hours, slowly cooking that meat until it becomes super tender. But of course, it's not all that simple because there are 2 other very important components. The first one are these brown braised onions, which I think are actually perfectly delicious on their own. They are truly what I consider to be a flavor bomb. I'm using white pearl onions here because I feel like they look especially nice, dotted around the beef bourguignon. And since they're already peeled, I just went straight to sauteing them in some butter and oil and kind of just like rolling them around, trying to make sure they're as evenly browned as possible. This is when I'm pouring in some more beef stock and also adding in my herb bouquet. I don't have cheesecloth, but I do have these little disposable tea bags that I'm using instead, and they actually work very well. And this is again the part where time just takes over, letting it simmer really slowly. I still want them to retain their shape, but I do want them to be perfectly tender. The second important component are these mushrooms, which I'm going to saute again in some butter and oil. There's a lot of love for butter in French cuisine, probably why it tastes so good. And when Julia Child was making this recipe, she did stress how how important it was to not let the mushroom steam. So I learned my lesson from the beef. I went in smaller batches. They now have this like beautiful buttery shine. I'm just taking it off and setting it aside with my lovely pearl onions. So now I have my mushrooms done, my onions done, and the stew is ready. Just going in with a fork to make sure that the meat is as tender as I like it to be. What I really want to do here is to reduce the liquid until it gets that like nicer, thicker consistency. But first I transferred everything over to another Dutch oven, just adding in my braised onions, my sauteed mushrooms. Doesn't that just look so good? And going back to the sauce, once it's at this point where it can coat the back of my spoon, that's when I'm taking it off the heat and just pouring that right over everything else. And that just looks delicious. Which brings me to today. It's a pretty hefty stew, as you can imagine. This supposedly serves 6, but instead it can just serve 6 happy me's. How about that? So right now you can see that the sauce has really thickened there. So what I'm gonna do is cover this back up and we're going to just let it come to a simmer over the stovetop. And given that we have a pretty hearty entree, I'm just going to serve it up with some simple things. So I have some green beans here that I'm going to boil, and of course the baguette from earlier today. And that will be dinner. Onto here. Let her cook. Almost done. Then we can plate it. Changed my mind last minute about these beans. Decided to saute them in some chili butter. Boeuf bourguignon looks pretty much ready to go. Bread is cut. Time to serve it up. This is definitely the meal that I was looking forward to the most. Boeuf bourguignon, the mother of all stews. It might not be winter weather, but it is kind of rainy outside right now, so I feel like it kind of fits the mood. Here we have the beef. It just falls right apart in your mouth. My God. This sauce, I feel like, is the definition of luxurious. It is rich, it is velvety, it coats your tongue. The amount of time it took, the amount of ingredients in here, that's what gives it life. Try one of these onions, these braised onions. Remember what I said about flavor bombs? But how I think of like a French onion soup condensed into a single bite. That is what these onions taste like. That's the beauty of cooking it separately. My God. Every meal in Paris, I feel like I was just grabbing the bread and just soaking up whatever sauce there was. I'm just eating it all. This is just delightful. But you know, as they do in France, there has to be dessert after dinner, no matter how full you are. So, there is one more thing for today. But first, let me enjoy my boeuf bourguignon. Last thing on the agenda today, dessert. I love that dessert is such like a staple, and I get it. But I have to say, one of my favorite desserts to get all the time in Paris are crepes. They just have the perfect texture, the perfect consistency, and even something as simple as just having lemon and powdered sugar. And it's like the perfect after dinner snack. So that's exactly what I will be having. And once again, because it is ideal for the crepe batter to have an overnight rest, I had to prepare this batter last night. Fairly straightforward, only a few ingredients. There's cold water, milk that I've already combined together, some eggs, salt, flour, liquor again, and some melted butter. And all I have to do is really just to put the liquids, the eggs, and the salt into the blender first before I'm adding in the flour, and lastly, the melted butter. And then I'm just letting the blender do most of the work here, just until it looks smooth, no lumps, and today I have it right here. let's see if I can recreate the perfect crepe experience here in the kitchen. I unfortunately do not have the fancy crepe equipment, but let's just see. Just melting the butter here. Swirl, swirl, swirl. Okay. Flip. Oh no. I may have gotten a little excited and made a whole stack of crepes. I also did a few with the lemon butter from earlier this morning. It's gonna be so good. Going to plate this up. Maybe some sugar, some lemon, a little bit of syrup even. Here it is. And it is done. I might save the rest for, I don't know, a crepe cake or something. For right now, whew, it's good to just finally wrap up the day. Wait. Oh, the lemon butter one is so the perfect amount of zesty. Well, I've been eating so much all day. Great quick dessert to whip up. But this brings me to the end of today. Wow, it has once again been quite the cooking journey. I know I call it 24 hours, but every time I do this, I feel like I've been cooking for a week straight. But you know what? The results I'm very happy about. This was such a pleasure. As always, I hope you enjoyed. If you would like to see more of these videos, remember to like and subscribe. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one. Au revoir.